Hey, greetings and salutations. So today, this morning, I'm working on the Jeep, and what I'm working on is replacing these ends here. These are Rusty's Offroad's short arms with Rusty's flex joints, rebuildable flex joints. If you're not familiar with this is a part of a lift kit that I got from Pick Apart. Actually, a good friend of mine, Martin from Martin Belt, he picked this up when he was at Pick Apart in Vegas. He called me and asked me if I was interested in it, and I said, yeah, why don't you pick up this, and this, and leave the arms. And he ended up purchasing these arms and giving them to me. And we both kind of suspected that these flex joints were going to be worn out, but it was something that I was unfamiliar with, and I didn't know to the extent to which these could be rebuilt. Well, looking into it, I discovered that the only part that's rebuildable are the urethane inserts that go in here and hold this center ball in place. And I think what happened is that a couple of these joints got damaged in the rollover accident that the Jeep was part of, and these adjusters on this side that set the preload on the center section, the thread stripped out. No bueno. The joints are junk. I'm hoping that two out of the four are still decent, and I'm eventually going to replace them all. And I've decided that rather than use the flex joint, I was going to go with their standard rubber mounted joint. This is still a forged end, but it's got a factory replaceable rubber bushing in it, same as the other end. The interesting thing is that this joint and this joint are the same money. This is $45, this is $45. Maybe some of you are like, well, why don't you just get this joint if it's the same money? Wouldn't the flex joint be better? Well, it really depends on what you're building. If I was building a rock crawler or a vehicle that required a lot of unimpeded articulation, this would be my joint. And if I was building an off-road rig that was going to spend the majority of its time off-road, this would probably be my joint. I don't know what the maintenance schedule is on these, but I would imagine that it's quite labor intensive to keep up on the maintenance with this. Whereas this joint is the same joint that came with the factory arms, right? So this is replaceable, and it's available anywhere that sells auto parts, like O'Reilly's. If this joint goes bad, I can drop it in, beat this thing out because it's in a metal sleeve. I can beat this thing out, go to O'Reilly's or AutoZone or Napa, buy another bushing, slap it in, put it back in, Bob's your uncle. Good to go. This is only available at Rusty's. Right now I just got a two of the 2.5 inch bushings, and in a couple of weeks I'll order the 2 inch bushings for the upper arms. And the other advantage to doing this is that you can use the factory hardware. If you go back, I'll link it in the end card. If you go back to when I installed this lift kit, I had to change the hardware because these bushings, the hole in the bushing is smaller than the hole in that bushing. That, and the disadvantage of using a lift kit that you bought out of a junkyard is that it doesn't come with instructions. So I went back to the video that Martin made. I'll put a link up here, or is it wherever you see that little eye with a circle, that's where that video will be. Martin's video when he was taking this thing out of the junkyard, and I refer to that video to see how these arms were installed. Turns out the previous owner installed these arms on backwards. The bottom flex joint was mounted on the axle. The top flex joint was mounted on the body, whereas they both should have been mounted on the body. So the articulation happens at the body before the joint that's on the axle starts to flex. I didn't know that. I didn't know that until I went into Rusty's and started looking into purchasing these, and they say where the flex joint's supposed to go. Here's why I decided to use the rubber joint as opposed to the flex joint. First of all, this is my daily, and even with a good joint, these are going to transfer a certain amount of noise and energy through the chassis. They're a lot noisier, whereas these are rubber isolated, so it's going to absorb some of those shocks. What you give up in articulation, I think you gain in comfort. And since this is my daily driver, I'm more interested in having the thing track straight down the road, and when I hit a chuck hole, it doesn't sound like somebody's taking a jackhammer to my front suspension. Like I said, if I was building a rock crawler, this would probably be the joint that I was going to use, but I'm building an overlanding rig, so articulation isn't nearly as important to me as drivability. Obviously, the other reasons is the serviceability. So I'm going to swap these joints out. I'm going to of course, the one that's on the other side is completely junk because I had to weld the preload nut. I had to weld it in place so it wouldn't fall out. But I'll swap these out, put them back on, and take it down the road and see if it drives a little bit better. Stick around to the end of the video and I'll pull this joint apart and show you. I got these arms on the way they're supposed to be on. Yeah, that's what I've learned about these joints, and I've decided to go with the rubber ones just because I can stick with the factory hardware, and I'm not building a rock crawler, I'm building an overlander, and I really don't need a flex joint. Oh, side note. If you're doing something like this and you've got rubber joints like this, don't tighten the bolts down all the way until it's sitting at ride height under its own weight. If you tighten these down with the thing jacked up and the suspension in droop, you'll put the rubber bushings in a bind when you drop it down on the ground. So tighten all this up on the ground while it's sitting on its own weight. Fun facts to know and yell. Tight. Let's go for a drive. I'm not even a half a block away from the house, and I can already tell a huge difference. Rubber isolated joints are the way to go, man. If you're doing it on a daily driver. If you're building a rock crawler, go ahead and use the flex joints. But for something that's going to be pounding the pavement, probably more than it's going to see off-road, rubber joints are the way to go. We head down this dirt road and see how it feels. Oh, no death wobble. It's awesome. Doesn't sound like it's beating itself to death. And I just replaced the bottom joints too. All in all, not bad. Awesome. Dukes of Hazzard style. Go back to the ranch and close this video out, eh? Wow! Just a good old boy! Alright, this is the Rusty's Off-Road 2-inch flex joint. This is the wrong joint for lower control arms. This should have been a 2.5-inch joint. Whoever did this, I don't know why they decided to do this, because it doesn't cost any less to go with a 2.5 versus a 2-inch joint. They're all the same money. All those joints are the same money, 45 bucks. So you could have got the right joint for the lower control arm, and this probably wouldn't have happened. You can see how this thing is constructed. There's a shoulder on the inside here. This is a forged piece. There's a shoulder in here, and then this looks like about an 1/8 inch thick hardened washer that gets dropped in there. You get 1/2 of the rebuildable part. This is the part that you would buy if you're going to rebuild these joints. They come in pairs. They're 14 bucks. Take one joint, you've dropped that in. you take the flex part of the joint. This is what the attachment point to the vehicle is. That drops in. You take the other half of the urethane piece, drop that in, and then this gets dropped in, screwed into place, and the preload is set with this. And then once you get the preload set, you line it up to the closest notch, and you put in that set screw. That set screw gets threaded in there and captures that, and that's the joint. Again, I don't know what the maintenance schedule is on these joints, but I know that that stock rubber joint has a relatively long service life without any kind of input. And this is the kind of stuff that you need to do to fix the joint once it gets blown apart, and then you lose all your preload adjustability. So I did this just to get me by until my new joint showed up. I'll just take the jam nuts off and throw the joint away. Unless any of you guys need a freaking 2-inch, any of you guys need a 2-inch joint for a suspension system, let me know in the comment section. And if you want to wait, I'll have 2 more of these in a month or so. I probably should offer these up to Martin first since he bought them. Martin, you want these? If not, I'm going to offer them up to the community. And if any of you guys want them, and I'll even throw in the buggered up one with the really crappy welds that look like first grader did it. Comment in the comment section. If any of you are familiar with flex joints and you want to pipe in down in the comment section their experience and what the maintenance schedules might be on those particular joints, I think it's a pretty good idea that you keep them greased often, because there's nothing to keep the dirt and grime out. But if you got any experience with those joints, hammer away down there in the comment section and let other viewers know your experience on those flex joints, whether it's a Johnny joint or a flex joint or any other joint on the market. If you haven't done so yet, in the lower right hand side of this window is a button that says subscribe. It's big, red, can't miss it. Then right next to it is a picture of a bell. Click the subscribe button so that you're subscribed, and then go ahead right next to it and click that bell icon, and then you'll be notified of future uploads. Share this with your vast social media network, and as always, you have fun, stay safe, shoot straight, keep the powder dry, and have a splendid day.